Yeah, I think we're 6 minutes in. Maybe more people will join as we go, especially people who were supposed to be here. But I see Matthias. So let's say we have half of the area team, and that's enough for us to meet. It will be awkward for me to meet with myself. So we have several items. Let me see if I can share my screen. Oh, yes. That doesn't crash. Yeah, we have a thing called the procedural update, which basically, as a chair of the MLIR team, I'm also a member of the LLVM Project Council. So we had a meeting of the Project Council a couple of weeks ago, and there are two things that came out. One, all individual area teams sort of independently came up to a conclusion that we should just steer the process towards a normal consensus. And the Project Council kind of agreed on that. However, talking to people on the LLVM Foundation board, it appears that the area teams and the Project Council have broader privilege than the teams assumed. In particular, if we can look into this document, it says, if you look for area teams, it says area teams has 3 responsibilities. Well, they need to elect people among themselves. They did that. We need to maintain an up-to-date and comprehensive list of maintainers for the area of the project. So we need to figure out a way to nominate at least some maintainers for large components. We have a working group on tensor compilers. There was some interest in the newly added SMT stuff, but we may be missing people for more heavily exercised parts. In absence, it's a area team members that are defaulted as maintainers. So it's the 4 of us. And we need to find a way to either let people self-nominate and step up, or kindly ask people to do that. And then finally, area teams should prepare a meeting agenda by collecting all active RFCs in the community or significant disagreements, blah, blah, blah. And we should go and try to resolve disagreements around those issues. There is a bit of...
Hey, Alex, just one thing, because you were mentioning maintainers, like, did I change the definition of maintainer roles? What is a maintainer?
I don't think they did. Yeah, so it says its code owner was replaced by maintainer. So normally it's supposed to still be the same.
Code owner, is that what we have in the GitHub code owner? Is that the...
No.
No, okay.
So there is this discourse post that is very long, but basically...
Actually, there is a section in the dev guide, pasting the link in the chat.
Yes. Yes, and then there are proposed changes, but basically, since not much change, the role of a maintainer is basically to ensure the code gets reviewed. They don't have to review it by themselves. They are just a person who knows all there is to know about other people who work on this code. That's a historical definition. So basically, it might fall on people who are on the area team to know who is a good reviewer for each individual part of it. I think, given that we don't have enough people here in any case, I think it might be reasonable to ask people to volunteer for certain large parts. We probably want to identify those large parts. I'm taking tensor compiler as a default, but because that is a structured effort. But there might be others like core. I'm not sure somebody actively maintains core. maybe target or individual targets, like maybe NVIDIA is interested in having an NV target maintainer and AMD is interested in having an AMD target maintainer. Something we need to ask relevant contributors.
And are we going to like keep like a list, as in who are the maintainers? I'm wondering if the LLVM, if the GitHub code owner could be used for that also, because then you get automatically added as a
No.
review or notified at least.
Yeah, so the thing is, it was explicitly decided that code owners is being used, like GitHub code owners, is being used to subscribe to notifications. So GitHub code owners are not actual maintainers, and I think the point of renaming is to remove the confusion.
But
So
maintainers should probably also be code owners on the GitHub then.
I think they should do whatever works best for them. So if it's helpful for them to be notified, like I have several things that go to notification filters, I'm sure if they use a different flow, it's fine. We shouldn't be imposing that, I think. And normally LLVM used to have a code owners somewhere. Now it's called maintainers, but
Okay.
it's a free form, like in LLVM, or like if you want to work on alias analysis, these people are maintainers of that. And if you want to work on like memory SSA, this person and so on. And somewhere in the end, there is nothing. Yeah, so Nikita is responsible for everything that's not covered by the below. And it would be the same for us, I presume.
Yeah, I'm wondering how you would break down MLIR like that. So for example, would you say the tensor compiler is one component, or would you say the tensor dialect and the vector dialect is a separate one?
I would say whoever feels comfortable picking up that kind of work, I don't expect there will be too many volunteers. So let them choose. And if there is contention, which is possible, but it's not entirely expected, then we can see how to resolve it. But I expect like, oh yeah, people working on the tensor compiler work group will find one or two people who will be maintainers of that. And we might find a couple more people, but not many.
Okay, so basically ask people to volunteer, and maybe based on what they volunteer for, we see certain groups that kind of are one component.
I would say that, and I would say we go and look at who are the, I don't know if we can find easily frequent reviewers in certain directories. We can find frequent committers, but maybe by like using GitHub API somehow, I don't know how exactly we can find who is usually reviewing these patches and say, well, since you're reviewing them anyway, how about we make it official?
So that's in case nobody volunteers, we ping people. That's what you or
Yes, I think that's what we can do, and then if we cannot find anybody, it follows on us.
I have the feeling we're also going to find some quite a few dead components.
Yes, at which point it might be reasonable to start discussing whether they could be deleted. And it's a bit of a radical way of finding maintainers by saying, oh, x86 vector, nobody wants to maintain it, so we are going to delete it because we don't understand how it works. And if somebody says, oh, we absolutely need it, then if you do, please come and maintain it.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay, so there is that. So maybe sorry, we don't have Renato, who is the scribe, so I'll take a minute to write it down and then expand.
Could I also add something? I would like to get more involved, but since I'm not an active maintainer right now, I'm wondering if there's like a nice way that I could get more involved and maybe graduate at some point to becoming a maintainer of one of these components.
I mean, you're clearly a candidate to be the maintainer of the polynomial dialect.
Yes. I mean, yeah, I have reservations about keeping that upstream anyway. So like maybe it would make sense to just delete that. But in the meantime, like I'm more interested in getting involved with MLIR core. And so I don't know if there's like a way for me to like start reviewing like some smaller PRs or simpler PRs or finding areas to clean up before like being called a maintainer.
Sure, I mean, it's whoever does the job gets the job. So if you just track all PRs or PRs to lib/IR or lib/analysis, you can start reviewing them. Like anybody who has GitHub access can review them. The maintainer duties from the link Medi posted is basically finding who can review the patch. So you don't necessarily need to be super familiar with the code base yourself, as long as you know who to ask and have some way of convincing that person to review, because I suspect that person might be River, who is no longer active, or Medi, or me, or other people who might be like checking MLIR emails once per week.
I would say there is another part also, which is being able to answer questions about a component. And but starting by reviewing code in a component is probably the best way, right? After a few months where you review the PRs that gets in a component, you start to get familiar with the ins and outs of the design and the implication and the interaction between this component and the others. And that's how de facto you become maintainer of it, because you can answer questions and you can actually review and you feel comfortable approving by yourself anything. So getting started by reviewing all the pull requests in an area is a good. And when I say review, that doesn't mean like you give the final approval. That means commenting. That means saying, well, that looks good to me, but someone else should approve. There is like a gradual way to get there, I think.
Okay. Yes, I hope that answers the question. Area team. The other thing was about RFCs and creating an agenda with RFCs and looking through that. So I created an agenda with 3 of the RFCs that I don't think they are very contentious. I think they're just stalled. So maybe we can try going through that and understanding why they are stalled and how can we unblock them. And based on that, we can figure out these rules of engagement, where basically this document says the area teams should not be, where it is, area team. Initial area teams. Yeah, area teams are not intended to be direction setters. But at the same time, they are supposed to do this RFC and do work towards resolving any contention. So area teams should try to identify actionable next steps for information together so RFC can proceed. And one thing that we don't know or have is any sort of formal-ish process where we can say, well, we like this RFC, but not too much, so no, thank you. Like at some point, or what are there actions that can be taken to improve it to be acceptable, or it just doesn't align with the project direction at all, where the project direction is still being set up by contributors, so just we are observing it and trying to set it up. So I would start with this RFC. So yeah, I posted that, so I'm sort of an interested party in this. And I posted this following a discussion I had with Nikita at LLVM, where like, oh, is LLVM Dialect supposed to mirror LLVM IR? And like, yes, it's written in the charter. LLVM IR has a mandatory data layout. Why it isn't? So I posted that on the day, and the discussion followed on initially what it would imply, and then it sort of devolved into how we can ensure it on certain paths, but not others. And I think it sort of stalled a couple of days ago with Mehdi saying, well, it wasn't mandatory initially, but then people in LLVM realized it was necessary for some things like inlining. So they've made it mandatory, and maybe we can do better.
Alex,
Yes.
you made a reference to the charter of the LLVM dialect.
Yes.
What do you have a
At
link?
least, yeah, at least something that I wrote. I hope it's still in the document. It might be inside Google. So this dialect maps LLVM IR into MLIR by corresponding operations and types. It's kind of vague.
Right.
The semantics of LLVM dialect operations must correspond to semantics of LLVM IR, and many divergences constitute a bug. It
Right.
is arguable whether the absence of a data layout somehow breaks semantics of LLVM instructions or not.
Right.
But that's what it is, and the idea was that yeah, LLVM wants data layout, and has always been. I don't think there's more text here. Double check.
To me, like like there's a difference between saying the dialect maps LLVM IR and it mirrors it. To me, a map requires, it's like an injection, and in this case, I think we want it to be, round tripable. But it's a bit different from like a one-to-one mirroring of things.
Yes, and also this was written when we only had a one-way translation. At the point we were not even thinking about translating LLVM IR back to the LLVM. And as usual, we don't like revise documentation after we change direction a bit.
I thought we always planned to have a round trip.
Maybe some people did. I wrote that initial version, so I can clearly say I didn't.
I mean, we talked about like the idea of writing some loop transformation by raising to MLIR and those kind of thing, and how people could do that. So that was always like on the map.
Maybe. Again, I wrote the text. I might have a bad memory, but not as bad as to forget. I think we just didn't update it after the initial thing materialized, where the initial thing was literally lowering a fine loop to LLVM.
What's interesting is that the sentence is like kind of written the other way around, right? Maps LLVM IR into MLIR, like if it's an import.
Yes, it's basically so that we don't have to define semantics of operation. Just say, oh, if you have an LLVM.add, just look what the semantics of LLVM IR add is.
Of course.
So I guess the question is, it's kind of stalled. How can we make progress on this? So from what I've seen, I made a read of it yesterday or the day before, there is a sort of emerging consensus between at least Renato, Fabian, and potentially Tobias. I'm not sure what he says about having some sort of pass level granularity for requiring this. And there is a question, which is also mine, how do we actually enforce this? So I think like in the end, we need this data layout stuff. We have always needed it. We just don't have a good way to model it. So how can we make progress here? And I would like to hear opinions because, again, I'm the original poster, so I feel like somebody else should be pushing opinions before I do. Matthias, you get to say something because
Yeah, so
it's your job now.
I didn't follow this in detail, but I was until recently, until six months ago, I think I never dealt with data layout. So I was wondering what benefit do we get from making it mandatory, and how come I never had to deal with this until 6 months ago?
Well, we can flip it by saying, well, when you had to deal with it, why was that?
It was because I had index type and I wanted it to either lower to I32 or I64 or something like that.
Yeah, I suppose you didn't have to deal with it before because it worked for your use case, so the default was sensible. The default was to be I64.
Yeah, I think the pass, I think this entire data layout stuff, when was it added to MLIR? Maybe it was, I think in the beginning, the lower to LLVM pass, you gave it I think a pass option. You said you want to have 32, 64 bits. I guess this has grown over the last maybe 2 years, and before there was probably not even I think the data layout dialect itself is also not relatively new, right?
So it is relatively new, but before that, we just had a string attribute that we would slap on a module. And that string attribute would contain the LLVM data layout as is because it's also a string.
So we already had it before. Now it's just a more structured format.
We actually have both. You can still slap a string on the module, and the translation to LLVM IR will copy that over.
And if it is mandatory, then that means the built-in module must have a data layout, otherwise the converts to LLVM pass would reject it. Is that the implication?
We didn't quite figure that out in the RFC, so my initial thinking was that we can have an LLVM.module instead of built-in.module, and LLVM.module would have a mandatory attribute. And then the place that introduces this would have to specify that like the operation would be invalid by itself if the layout is not specified, but nothing forces you to introduce this first.
Is there such a thing as an empty data layout?
In LLVM IR, there is a default. You can put an empty string or give it just an what it's called, the endianness. And that is a sufficient data layout string, and it has defaults. Which is also what we currently do here. So if there is no data layout, we'll just take whatever the default is and we copy that over from it.
Alex, when you were saying like we need to figure out how to make progress here, did you mean that we should talk about the like in depth, like
yes,
or
I
about the process aspect of it?
Yeah, I'm trying to bring Matthias up to speed, but we should talk about the process more indeed.
Yeah, because here is like I assume that when there is an RFC, there is someone motivated to make progress on it, and this person is like the one who should be trying to summarize and navigate the various aspects that have been raised in the RFC, right? It's like there is feedback on an RFC, and so someone wants to get something done, they get feedback, and then they should like be the one. And so here it seems like the weird thing is that you're the one who opened the RFC, but it was more like someone told you something. It's not like you have a need or anything right now.
It's not that I have a need, and it's also not an RFC in a sense. I'm not, well, it's okay. It's an RFC in the primary sense of the term. I'm looking for comments.
Right.
I'm not looking to necessarily make a change. I will if I see a good consensus. And that's where like my summary was, there seems to be this idea emerging that we want it to be somehow per pass. And if that's where we are going, and there is no objection to that, then the conclusion could be, well, the proposer, so me in this case, should think about how to make it on per pass basis and make a proposal how to implement it.
Right.
So I
I mean,
guess
is there more than the run-on operation would be like check if there is a data layout and issue an error and return pass failure?
so Renato mentioned an idea of some soft failure that I suppose the pass just does nothing without failing. That's, I mean, if it's inlining, it just doesn't inline, fine. But if it's a conversion pass, that would be strange. So, but I suppose if there are no other objections or anything, the idea would be to explore that direction and come up with a proposal. And basically, since Renato was arguing for that, I can try engaging him directly and saying, well, if you have a thing in mind, let's collaborate on that and come up with the technical idea on how to do that.
Something that is interesting is that the concept of data layout can be useful at layers above LLVM dialect.
Yep. And Tobias actually mentioned this. More dialects require data layout, or I would say more passets require data layout. So it can, like, that's where I think doing the pass granularity might help. We just say this pass needs a data layout, or maybe let it somehow specify what kind of data layout properties does it need.
Right.
And iterate from there. Okay, let me say for this, ask the proposer.
As you're the RFC author, you're going to write a short
Yes,
summary of it.
I would ask Matthias to write that, so I don't ask myself. Okay, at least this is something that we can like figure out. Okay, there is a question that the proposer might answer to make progress. Okay, let's move on to the next one. So there is a long and very convoluted RFC. I am not the proposer, but I think I read and vaguely remember most of it. So it doesn't start as an RFC. It starts like a sort of bug report saying common subexpression elimination does a bad thing where there is a Linalg map nested in the Linalg map and both have an index, and common subexpression elimination would deduplicate this index 0 with this index 0, but they relate to different Linalg.map. They're actually not relating to the same thing. And it followed on what's the idea of CSE, is this operation pure or not, and so on and so forth, where at some point I wrote a summary in the middle, where basically this operation is not pure because it reads from some state, and that state is being set by the surrounding Linalg.map. We have other operations like this, in particular thread and block IDs in GPU. They read from the context. There is actually not a problem with any of these because Linalg maps are not supposed to be nested, or GPU.launch are not supposed to be nested. They technically could be, nothing stops that, and it might be even semantically valid to have like dynamic kernel launches, but it's vaguely defined as not supported. So the bug fix is to say it's not pure. there is a notion of speculation that we went into. There is a terminology saying that was not clear, but I think we sort of clarified that below. And then there is a big discussion on whether to model such behavior, like connecting to the parent operations through memory effects or through some other kind of side effects, where we could say there is a special kind of resource in the memory effect. So it's sort of a memory, but it's not the normal memory. It's some special Linalg map memory or GPU register memory. Or we can try doing a custom resource with a caveat that any previously implemented upstream transformation would not be aware of the custom resource and would be aware of the memory resource. So that is a summary of the discussion below. And what basically happens, there's more discussion on common sub-expression elimination, speculation, what they mean. And the original proposer basically last posted 12 days ago and then disappeared. Well, they didn't necessarily disappear. Nobody answered anything about this.
I talked to the guy at the LLVM conference, and I'm just wondering if I haven't followed this discussion recently, but there was a lot of things that he mentioned with this. So we talked about, okay, memory side effects and side effects on the compiler. Was that something that was also discussed in here? Because that's what he seemed to say.
What is side effect on the compiler?
Yeah, I don't quite remember. So what I remember, it was kind of it was kind of. So I encouraged him to maybe give a ODM meeting about ODM Open Design meeting presentation about this thing, because it's we talked about it for 1 hour, and I think it was still not entirely clear to me what exactly can we do to improve the situation, and he had some ideas, but that was my so even after one hour there was still a lot to discuss.
Okay, that sounds like an action item, clearly. I can probably reach out to them, and we do have ODM slots that are open. We just need enough people to confirm they're coming, because otherwise, if it's only us, it will be less interesting. So maybe in addition to that, let's say class have a time. So we have some hope that people will actually come. I would also say, so some of this from my original post here, like Linalg just should not be pure. That's a bug. We should just go and remove that. It might break some, not break, but disable some optimizations. So be it.
What was that? I think this was discussed on another. I remember this was discussed before. This is not the first time. Was that controversial to make it not pure?
I don't think it was.
No, it was. Like
it?
the first time, like if you look at my first message in this thread, I think I posted a link to like the first time we noticed this bug. And
Yes.
at the time, I had a long argument with Mahesh, who kept arguing that this should be pure. So if the argument is not here, it was mentioned in the PR. So just right, like in the middle. Now you have to go down.
This?
Yeah, I think that's where. So the bug was created out of this PR likely.
Index ops need to be pure.
Oh,
Right
remove
here.
pure. Wait, so it was pure and it's no longer, or no? What is?
So there is a PR that was doing exactly this. So remove pure.
I got it. Yeah. Mhm.
Okay, so let's make sure. But Mahesh has not involved himself into this discussion.
Maybe he hasn't seen it.
Because the title was not
Yes.
bringing him here, maybe. I don't know. Anyway, I was just pointing that we attempted it in the past and it was controversial.
Maybe it's no longer controversial.
I mean, to me, correctness should trump anything.
Yes, I agree with that. And I think at least for where upstream is concerned, that would always be the case. If downstreams are happy with something else, they can revert the patch locally or come propose something better. But I think we can. So my suggestion would be to then either revive the old PR somehow or send a new patch and say, well, correctness is important upstream. And if somebody wants to do it differently, please come up with a proposal where it can be done. There is an ongoing discussion, point to the discussion, and say, well, it's a temporary state. We will fix it. In the meantime, if somebody is not happy with it downstream, they can revert it locally or have another local fix. And the faster we come up with a better solution for everybody upstream, the better it is.
I seem to remember that one of the arguments then was, okay, these things cannot be nested. Therefore, if you don't nest them, is it still a correctness problem?
Yeah, so I mentioned that they were not designed to be nested. The problem is we never specify that in any writing, and we do not have a verifier.
Mm-hmm.
So there may be a solution to say verify that, but that I think Mehdi mentioned that would not be composable properly.
I already see where the discussion is going to go.
Yeah, that's why we shouldn't necessarily go into deep technical details. I see a bug, I see a solution which is to remove a thing that disables some optimization. It doesn't change correctness, it doesn't change anything else. It sounds like an acceptable solution to. So we can try and see, and we can also use it as like a try and see approach for engaging with downstreams and making sure people are out of the woods, maintaining things they care about. Okay, at the very least, revive.
Yeah, I would try to revive the existing one. Otherwise, it might look like if a new one is created and the old discussion, it may look like okay. Otherwise, it may look like somebody's creating a new PR to get another chance to get the change in.
Isn't that how things work here?
Sometimes they work like that, unfortunately.
Okay, so it's not this. Okay, so we have a couple of action items here. Okay, and see, and then we need to reconvene probably by the next area team meeting if there has been no progress on these, like this person is not an active contributor. So I would like to turn them into an active contributor, but if they just don't want to, there's nothing we can do. We should still fix it up.
Yeah, that guy's a PhD student at the university, so I think he's mostly looking at it from the academic lens. I don't think he has like a specific problem here that's blocking him.
Yeah, but it's a 4-character patch.
Yeah.
But you can just go on GitHub, click the edit button, and be happy with it.
I'm saying that may be why there was also no reply in the last.
Forgot the test.
Okay, so the last thing is this simplify x86 intrinsic generation. And it's an older one, which has a proposed PR. So it says that in LLVM, there is a bunch of intrinsics that are target specific. And because of how LLVM intrinsics work, in particular, there are just functions with special names. We are creating lots of operations where like enter something which encodes things like types and widths and maybe variations of the instruction, like assembly instruction, where in MLIR we might not necessarily need all of these. So we are currently defining an operation per intrinsic. We also have this LLVM.call intrinsic, which acts more like LLVM IR does. It's even more opaque because it's just a function call with no specific registration of function names. And yeah, the discussion was basically, yeah, sure, this is also a problem elsewhere on ARM and on AMX. And one person is supportive, same person commenting, and the discussion basically died out after that.
Who wrote the RFC? Okay.
This person, I believe they are at Intel.
Adam, yeah.
So on the related topic, I chatted with somebody from NVIDIA at LLVM, and they mentioned they were adding lots of intrinsics into LLVM IR, and they were quite happy with having MLIR on top, where they can, instead of adding lots of intrinsics, add like 3 and have them parameterized by attributes. So that might be an alternative proposal here. But I feel like there hasn't been too much discussion. We have a PR. So I guess.
Was anybody voicing any concerns here, or?
Nope. But there are only 2 people who are supportive.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not sure. That's one of the hard cases where it's unclear if there is a silent majority who is supportive but just doesn't care to write down. Nobody clicked the like of supportive. There are 4 people who liked the original post, 1 who expressed support, and 3 more. Well, like, I guess the question here is, this is deleting something. I would be on the side of, yeah, deleting something nobody opposes, let's just go for it. But is this enough of support that we can just ask the person to please proceed or go approve their patch? Or what do we do here?
It looks like, yeah, if nobody else is answering, then the other folks don't care.
Yes, that's where I like my thinking. If we want to remove something or simplify something and nobody complains, it's fine, because then there is the inverse. If somebody proposes to add a new dialect that does, I have no idea what it can do that we don't want to do, but I don't know, a dialect for LaTeX equations.
Mm.
And we like, nobody answers because nobody really needs that. I think in that case, it's more of a reject because nobody is willing to actively support it. And that's where we might get into the discussion on what's the way of doing RFCs. Proposing new things versus proposing change versus proposing removal might have different level of support required.
Yeah, I feel like removing stuff is always a bit easier because it's reducing the maintenance burden. And if somebody's using it, they would speak up.
So let's say we ask them to proceed.
That would make sense to me. But I haven't followed this in detail, but based on
There is literally that. So we currently have operations for all intrinsics, at least in x86. And we don't need them. We don't do anything with them. I would say if we were to do transformations on them, it would make sense to have them as operations. Unless we do, it's just overhead.
And the component that we're talking about, isn't that so? Actually, isn't that something that the Intel folks would potentially be maintainers of anyway?
Yes, that's why I have a background sort of. If they do the change, they get to be the maintainer of the dialect. Or actually, I'm not sure the dialect will still exist. Maybe the conclusion of the dialect will be removed.
Yeah, so the guy who sent the RFC, Adam, he's I think in Renato's group in Intel.
Okay, so maybe removing stuff. So good. 86 dialect. Let's say we also ping people from similar dialects. So NVVM, AMD GPU, because they have similar issues, and it's unclear to me if we should like replicate this decision or not. Okay, at least we have something actionable on all of these. I would hope maybe next time we advertise more and more people can come and discuss, so it's not essentially the two of us or the four of us forcing decisions. So yeah, I think this basically for now our action schema reduces to let's find people who we should ping, and then we need to put some deadline and what happens if they don't react. Okay, maybe quickly, so I put this point on rules of engagement for the area team that are unclear for all area teams and for the project council as well. One is clearly we should be doing this on some cadence, like at least monthly, to discuss this and we basically select the cases where it's relevant. Is there a need to let people call us in explicitly? And if there is, I don't think we should put a limit like don't call us in immediately, but say like call us when there is a problem, not just to review your RFC. And somehow document that. So if nobody reacts to your RFC while we are trying to figure out what that means, at least in these people, they should come and react somehow.
That would make sense to me.
There are 5 minutes of. Okay, we discussed maintainers, we discussed RFCs, we have 5 minutes left for questions from the audience. Sorry, it took longer than we expected, but it's also the literal second time we have this meeting. We're still trying to figure it out. So if there are any questions about this, about RFCs, basically general questions about MLIR are also fine here. There is a chat message asking to post previous recordings. Well, I do not have access to that. Mehdi does. If he still does, if not, then I suppose they might have been lost.
Did you ask something, Alex?
Yes, somebody on the chat asks for recordings of previous meetings, and I think you're the only person who has access to those.
Yeah. I think Jacques has access to them as well. Do you want? Yeah, you messaged me earlier. Like, were you looking to do it yourself or something?
I can help if needed, but basically we haven't posted the 2 or 3 previous recordings.
I see. Yeah, I can look into that.
Okay, thanks. Let me know if you need help. Anything else?
Thanks for driving all of this. Doing a good job.
Oh, thank you. It's very good. We get 3 minutes back.
Take care,
Okay,
bye.
so as an announcement, I guess, so we will have a ODM/Tensor work group next Tuesday. Same time, but Tuesday, not Thursday, because Thursday is a holiday in most of Europe. I will post an announcement in like 5 minutes. Okay, thanks everyone for joining, and enjoy your day.